You're listening to the 3 Feet Radio Show with Ben Carbonaro and Luke Herbert. From our studios come special guests and netball commentary, exclusively on YouTube.
Just slight correction, Shannon Francois re-signed after still. She didn't come from another squad. The mistake was caused by the Chinese jamming the 3 Feet Radio satellite again. We've had to invest considerably in security measures against such attacks. And it's a g'day to the listeners, and I am the co-host of the 3 Feet Radio Show, Luke Herbert, and in today's program we're going to offer a little bit of a late wrap-up of the ANZ Championship Grand Final, and we're going to take a bit of a look at the Australian Diamond squad, which has been named for the upcoming Netball World Cup. And, as we approach the middle of the year, it's now officially less than 6 months to Christmas, I need to introduce my esteemed co-host and netball journalist, Ben Carbonaro. How are you doing today, Ben?
Yeah, well, thanks, Luke. I must say it was an exciting ANZ Championship Grand Final with the Queensland Firebirds getting up by one goal after the New South Wales Swifts. They led for the whole game, but then the Firebirds pulled it from under them in the last 40 to 45 seconds. It was an amazing game.
Yeah, for netball, I think it was like a mid-year Christmas present, that game. I mean, it was always going to be something special, the Firebirds and New South Wales Swifts clashing when you looked at the quality of those two sides. But what do you think was the decider?
It could have been any number of things in that last quarter. There was a turnover during the last quarter from Kim Green, but I think one thing that really caught my eye watching that last quarter just recently, in fact, just got around to watching it this week, was a Laura Geitz intercept with 8 minutes to go for the Firebirds, and she intercepted it and it went straight down, and then the Firebirds scored. But then interesting also, at the 4 minute mark, the Swifts led 54-51. So it just shows how quickly the momentum swung.
And doesn't it just prove the old adage that, the only score that matters is the one after the final whistle or siren, depending on sport?
Oh, particularly in this instance, absolutely. And I think the crowd of 6,500 up there in Brisbane were treated to a great game of netball. You mentioned it was a Christmas present, but I've had people go through my work with the Australian Football League umpiring department, just people in general who don't really follow netball. They were glued to the grand final, and I think, like you said, it's a great advertisement for netball. And leading into the Netball World Cup in August, I reckon now is a very important time for netball in Australia for media coverage and commercial interest. It's just absolutely huge. And I think if the gold medal match at the Netball World Cup can be as exciting as what we saw in the ANZ Championship Grand Final, I think netball will be even bigger and better in 2017 and beyond.
I think the Netball World Cup final certainly has the potential to be of the same quality as the ANZ Championship Grand Final, and it also very much has the potential to be decided in the last minute. But, you and I are going to do a proper preview of the World Cup in a future program. And just staying with the Grand Final, with two such quality sides out on court, do you think any players stood out for you, or do you think there were any factors around injury?
One for the Swifts was Jade Clark with her niggling knee injury. She didn't start and didn't come on until the last quarter, replacing Abby McCulloch. And Kim Green was a little bit off the ball too. She's had problem with her calves for a while now. So hopefully she'll be right to go for Netball World Cup, and they'll be managed so she can play at a good level, because we know Kim Green is a pretty good quality mid-quarter at wing attack or centre usually, and is a good leader as well. And other than that, really, it was only really Clark that there was the major injury concern.
Yeah, and I wish Clark and Green all the best for getting over their niggling injuries in the lead up to the World Cup. I think netball was better for both of those players at full fitness. And, just speaking of the World Cup, the Australian Diamonds squad has been named. And what are your first impressions of the squad, Ben?
Well, I think the only one glaring omission here is the non-inclusion of Susan Pettit. If listeners don't know who that is, that was Susan Prattley. She's changed her name because she's married now. It's been like that for a while. On paper and statistically, the best performed Australian goal attack all season next to Caitlin Thwaites at the Swifts. Yet they decided to go with Erin Bell instead. And then also two forced changes with Maddie Robinson out due to injury and Bianca Chatfield retiring. So a bit of a shake-up there. But so the only noticeable omission was Pettit not being picked.
And I certainly think the squad reflects the sheer amount of depth of talent that Lisa Alexandra had to choose from. You know, I think Kiwi netball fans are envious of that kind of depth, and ultimately I think it is going to benefit the Diamonds at the World Cup, because ultimately, while nobody likes to see injuries, serious or otherwise, I get the feeling that the Australian Diamonds have enough depth to cover 1 or 2 serious injuries if it was to eventuate. How do you feel about that, Ben?
Yeah, yes, I agree, Luke. I feel they have certainly got that depth, and just the replacement players we've got here, like the changes are Maddie Robinson out injured, replaced by Paige Hadley. Bianca Chatfield out retired, replaced by Rebecca Bully, and Tegan Phillip dropped, and replacing her is Erin Bell. So Erin Bell comes in after missing selection at last year's Glasgow Commonwealth Games, but we've seen how well Bell can play. Bell is certainly someone who is very mobile, and she isn't just your standard goal attack. She does a lot of work outside the circle as well, and she's very dynamic as well, isn't she, Luke?
She is, and she came from the Adelaide Thunderbirds, who were the bottom team in the Australian Conference. And, I think, again, if we can come back to the ANZ Championship for a moment, the bottom-ranked Australian team or team in the Australian Conference can produce an Australian diamond, and the tactic don't have any players for the trials for New Zealand A and the Silver Ferns, I think is very telling.
It certainly is very telling, but I think no matter where Bell plays, she's always going to be someone who's an international quality player who can be picked or at least be invited into these selection camps for the Diamonds. And also Caitlin Bassett, Bell, Corletto, Geitz, Green, Leighton, and Medhurst are all members of the Diamonds team that won gold at the 2011 World Championships in Singapore, courtesy of a goal in the last second of extra time against the Silver Ferns. And I remember that game. That was a thriller, that one.
Yeah, and as we've stated before, this is very much going to be Australia's Netball World Cup, both for the side and for the promotion of the sport, which you alluded to earlier. And, do you have any final thoughts on the Australian Diamonds squad?
I just think that Lisa Alexander has done a very good job. She's picked a side that's very balanced and very experienced, because one thing she did do in Glasgow was her and her fellow selectors selected a side that was a bit inexperienced, a bit not experienced. But I think Netball World Cup, you could almost say it's more important than the Commonwealth Games, depending on who you talk to. That's not my opinion myself. I keep both tournaments on equal footing, but it's probably better for the Netball World Cup, particularly in Sydney on home turf, to have as strong a side as possible. So hopefully they can bring home the bacon. And just quickly, Luke, on ANZ Championship player movements, they're already happening. I know off air you mentioned to me Phoenix Karaka to the Pulse and Shannon Francois to the Steel.
Yeah, and that's an interesting move from Phoenix to the Pulse. Purely as a Steel supporter, I'm disappointed she's left, but I think we'll have to cover the ANZ Championship player movements perhaps in one hit, or as they happen. If our listeners have a preference, please leave us a note. I think that brings us to the end of this wrap-up show. And as we are now closer to Christmas than we are not, I think we can start looking towards the World Cup in the 3 Feet Radio studio as well, which is a very exciting time. Thank you for joining me, Ben.
Thanks very much, Luke. Looking forward to it, and hopefully soon we can also discuss the Australian Netball League as well, which is already in full swing down here in Australia.
You've been listening to the 3 Feet Radio Show with Ben Carbonaro and Luke Herbert. Tune in next time for more special guests and netball commentary exclusively on YouTube.